Gypsy Rose Papery. We are back for part 2 of the craft with me of painting this cover. Craft with me, come paint this cover with me. It looks pretty badass, I think. And oh, my sewing machine should be moved a little bit. There we go. So we have the same stuff if you wanted to join along. Some brushes, the same 3 paints as last time. And if you didn't watch the previous video, go watch that first to see how I did this, and then you can join along this time. Our glue, and I think that's all that we needed. I have my heat gun here as well so that we can dry quicker. So let's go ahead and get our setup started. I don't want to move this because then I won't know like if I'm in frame, so I'm just gonna put this on top. I'm gonna be a good girl and actually pour the paint out the way you're supposed to from the cap. I'm gonna put my black somewhere in the corner so it's far away from my other colors. I will probably use a bit more black this time because since the cover was shiny before, my goal with the first initial paint was to just kind of matte it down and get rid of that gold sheen. And now we're really gonna get into like making it look completely different. So I'm just giving the paint a nice width apart. We have our Mod Podge, and we're just gonna take a nice glob that we will thin out. So let's go ahead and do that now. Ooh, oh wow, I really just let the water fly there. But this is actually a good amount of water, so I'm not too angry about it. So basically you want to dilute your paint to a watery consistency. This one that I use is like a fabric and it's like a really thick paste. So you may not need this much water for whatever glue you're using. You just want to get it to a watery consistency because we're going to mix our paint with the glue. And just to recap, we do that so that the paint sort of adheres better to our cover and also prevents puckering of your fabric from the base. So let me move several things out of the way here. I'm gonna put my paints over here. I don't know if you'll be able to see. That's probably better. Okay. So we're gonna water down, just pull some of the paint. I'm gonna start with darkest. Grab some of that Mod Podge and then add some of this lighter red to make sort of like a wine but with a little bit more red in it. And we're going to continue with painting. Just get a nice coat on your cover. Obviously I'm using the texture on this cover to my advantage, but you could do this with like another kind of fabric, like for example a muslin or something. You just, obviously the colors won't be quite the same because I'm getting a lot of the red from the actual fabric. So just something to keep in mind. And the fabric, someone was asking me, I think it was from Joann's, if I'm not mistaken. It was just a fabric I found at Joann's. And so this layer you want it to be more paint than water. You don't want it to be as watery because you really want to start sort of covering. And the paint that you put on doesn't have to match exactly every time in color, because you want variation and you want depth in your color. So I'm using a lot of that wine color, and I'm going to add a little bit of black on there. And always remember, it's dark into light, and a little goes a long way with your darks. So just be careful that you don't overdo it with your darks. So here we're just, again, just more layers, keep building your layers. And it's cool because you kind of got that faint sort of crackly pattern underneath. So I think it really adds a lot to the actual painting. So if you look the difference between these two already, we can start seeing some dimension there. Don't forget to go into your creases, and don't forget to do your edges. And once you have a good layer, don't mess with it too much, because the more you kind of go back and go over it, you're gonna start pulling the paint away, and it kind of defeats the purpose. So I need some more of this red. Again, you're just mixing, repeating patterns, mixing paints with your water glue, and then just going in here and going for it. I think the most important thing to kind of keep in mind when you're using paints is to just kind of let yourself flow and not get too caught up in, am I doing the right thing? Because it's paint. It's fluid, it moves. Just don't overthink it. Just go with the flow is my best advice to anybody who is looking to use paints with a cover, or wanting to play around with painting a cover. I'm gonna start pulling in some more black. As we build, it'll get darker and darker. So right now, you know, we started off with a really kind of more of a reddish, a red with a little bit of black in it. Now we're adding the wine color to it with a little bit of black kind of thrown in there. And then our final layer will be with a lot more black. So yeah, again, just working in layers. I know I keep repeating myself. So in the first video, I guess I should have had a trigger warning about me talking about quitting Instagram or whatever. I thank you so much to everybody who genuinely commented. I think everybody was very sort of just sweet and kind. And the thing I want to say about that whole me talking about quitting Instagram and all that, it wasn't for sympathy. You know, I really do thank you for all of you who were sympathetic and left beautiful, just like the sweetest comments ever. But what it was more about was kind of like, I wanted to give a voice to anyone out there who was kind of feeling that same way, and it seemed like there was some that were. But thank you to all of you who were so sweet and kind and left beautiful comments, and I really truly appreciate you. So here we are going to dry. I'm going to move my paint over because I obviously don't want to dry or move any of that glue. I'm just gonna go ahead and dry this with my glue gun, and then we'll be back. Okay, so this is what it looks like. It's looking really good, and it's got a lot of kind of variation in the color, which is what I was looking for. And then just to save time, I already did the inside and did the edges. So I think that it looks good. I want it maybe a little bit deeper. So now we're just gonna use the cranberry color. Just gonna glop a bunch of that. You probably can't see it on camera, but I'm just dumping a bunch of this color and then using my leftover glue to mix that together. And then I'm gonna go back. And now I'm putting a nice thick layer of paint. I'm not really adding too much water to it. I'm just adding a nice thick layer. So you can see there's already a big difference in this to this. So we're just gonna nice thick layer of paint all over. I think we're good here. Again, once you get it to a place that you like, just don't go back over it too much unless there's little spots that bother you, which is kind of like what I'm doing now, because you're gonna start maybe lifting up some of that paint you already put down, and then you're kind of just defeating the purpose at that point. I think we're good. So now I'm going to go ahead and dry this layer. Again, paint the edges and the inside and come back. Okay, so we are pretty much done with the paint, but when I first started this, I wasn't sure where it was going, but this is really turned out to be really special. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but the variations in the color based on the fabric and the pattern in the fabric is really, really beautiful. So my last step will be the black. I'm not going to paint it all black. I'm going to use the black as an accent color. So I'm putting a little bit of red in it from the leftover Mod Podge that I mixed, just so that I can add that sealant quality as well. And I'm just going to mix all the paint that I just poured out with some of that Mod Podge glue and a little bit of that red, just a little bit. You can't, if you look at it, it'll still look completely black. So I'm gonna use my fingers. Basically, I'm gonna dip in the black, and I'm just gonna rub around the edges. And the reason I'm using my fingers as opposed to like a brush is because I wanted to have sort of like what is that? I forget what it's called, like a brushed bronze sort of thing effect, like an oil rubbed effect sort of. So I'm not going to use a brush because I want it to get lighter as it comes in towards the cover, and my finger like just allows for an easier manipulation of the paint that way. So I'm just rubbing, literally rubbing the paint on, and then on the edges I want them to be really black, because I have another effect that I will add to the edges later, and the black will really help it stand out. But as far as around the spine, as far as around the perimeter of the book itself, I just want to rub that black paint on all like the edges. So definitely get in there. If you have the book ledges, you want to really get in there, because when you think about it, when you think about the aging of a book, think about where like the dirt would accumulate. It would be right at the edges, kind of like where there's nooks and crannies. That's where you really want to get in and really play up that darker effect. So what you do is just lightly rub around the ledges, and don't put too much paint where you're doing the spine because it's not as big of a surface area, so you just don't want to go overboard. But you definitely want to rub before the paint starts to dry on you, because you want to have like that very sort of diffused look, kind of like dirt, you know. So let's bring it this way. You need a little bit more black around these edges here. So this technique that I do, I've done in a lot of my vampire books, and it's what kind of gives it that aged, sort of weathered look. So as you can see, it's already looking so much more defined and sort of found in attic quality is what I call it, or found in the basement somewhere in a trunk. So again, just rubbing it all around the edges before you have any harsh edges. Hopefully I'm in frame. This is like one of my favorite parts of painting a cover, is kind of distressing it to make it look older. Okay. All right, so like this. So look at that. Look at the dimension on that. It's insane. So here, I'm gonna add a little bit more water because here there's kind of like a harsh line. I don't want a harsh line. I want a nice, soft line here. Okay. So just adding a little bit of water to the black to make it a bit fainter so I can really diffuse that color. Okay, so like that. And the spine could use a little bit more definition, I think. Because remember, your spine sticks out, so it would probably pick up the most dirt. And then, because, you know, dirt gets everywhere else, what I do is this is where this stiff brush comes in handy, and you want to make sure you squeeze out any excess water in your stiff brush, okay? So if you have to get a towel, you can use your pants if you don't care. These are my crafting pants. I can just dry it out there. You want a fairly dry bristle like this. You're going to quickly get some paint on there. Like that. And then you're going to, every so often, if you put too much paint, you can kind of rub it off there, but you want sort of, you know, some splotches here and there. Muddy it up a little bit. Okay, so I think we're good. I think this is it. This is the final. This is our finished base layer cover. Obviously we're going to embellish it. We're going to add some other detailing, but this is the base of the paint layer. I hope you guys have a great afternoon. I love you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Messy hands.